Good afternoon. Today is the 20th of November. I'm afraid the weather isn't particularly good today, but we shall continue anyway because it's time to answer some viewer questions, which a lot of you have very kindly left me on the channel in the last couple of days. Just to pick up on a couple of other things I said on Wednesday's video, there is still time to send in your entries for the 2,500 subscriber special. I have received a number of them already. The address to send them to is japl745@hotmail.com, via wetransfer.com. The videos need to be no more than 3 minutes long, and the rest of the details will be in the description of Wednesday's video. Let's get on with some of these viewer questions. So I will be referring at some point to the secret mission documents at some stage, because some of the questions I've had to sort of research a little bit, but you know, that's absolutely fine. First question from Richard Howlett. I do apologise if I get anybody's name wrong, and thank you for sending in all your questions. In your day job, what is the most obscure or rare car that you found for someone? I'd love to say find me a B2 Audi 90. Well, I very much like B2 Audi 90s, and I used to know somebody who actually had one of those when I was growing up. One of our neighbours actually had one of those. But in terms of clients, well, I've had a couple of people not very seriously say, can you find me things like a Honda S600 that was never sold in this country? And you know, can you find me some very specific old stuff like that? It's very difficult to find things like that, actually, and you know, so far that's not been the case. But in terms of normal clients that I get who want just normal cars to get them around, which is the bulk of my work really, the most peculiar cars I found were a Subaru Forester automatic. I think it was a 2006 second generation Forester, and then a 2005 Mitsubishi Space Star 1.5 automatic. There's not many of those left around. You know, it was quite a car. The person who owned it, I think, might have been retired or something, who had that. They're pretty decent cars, actually, really. They're not very exciting, but they do have very reliable engineering. So, yes, that's not that exciting an answer, but there we are. Next question is from Alan Simpson. I think we'll be seeing Alan's car on the channel quite soon in the 2,500 subscriber special. First of all, it says he likes a Q&A session. Well, that's what we like. That's what we're doing today. The year is 2000. You've just passed your driving test. Well, it's only 1 year before I passed my own one. And you've cashed in an ISA, which left you with £4,995 to spend on a used 90 Super Mini. What make, model, age, engine and colour do you go for? I'm going to go for a Daihatsu Charade. I've kind of always wanted one of those. I'm going to perhaps go for one that's got an airbag, so that's post 1996 car, and I'm going to see if I can find myself the top of the range ones. Sometimes they were called the GLXi SE, sometimes the GSXi. I think there were 1.5 and 1.6 litre engines available. I'm going to go for a manual. If there was a saloon version available as well, I will definitely buy one of those. They did make a saloon Charade for that particular generation, and I don't know, I quite liked it. There was I think a GTI version available as well, but you know, this is the channel where we go for more for luxury rather than performance. Mr. H. Saxby asks, my question doesn't really relate to the current situation of the recently announced 2030 deadline. Yes, we will be looking at that topic next week, don't worry. But which left-hand drive cars have you driven, and how did it compare to driving a right-hand drive car? I've actually driven 4 left-hand drive cars. They were all hire cars on holiday at the continent. It was a 2014 Fiat 500 Lounge automatic that had the worst automatic gearbox in it ever. And I wasn't really impressed with how the car drove particularly, or the space efficiency of it, because they're not very space efficient. You might as well just buy sort of a Panda, really. And just avoid that gearbox. That's the worst automatic gearbox in the history of motoring, I think. That robotised manual gearbox. It's terrible. Then there was a 2016 DS3. I'm not allowed to call it a Citroen DS3. That wasn't too bad. They're not, that's again, that space division at the size of the car. They are quite small, but then it's based on a C3, so you can't expect much. They're actually not that bad to drive. They're pretty nice. I don't know, in terms of reliability, how good they are. I don't know really that much about them, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think they're too bad. That was good. That was an automatic 1.2 turbo petrol. That was quite nippy. The next one I drove was a 2017 Ford Focus 1 litre EcoBoost estate with manual gearbox. That's the only manual car I've driven that's left-hand drive, and it just really messed me up in terms of not only having to think about where I was going, round the roundabout a different way and things, but also just having to change gear with the other hand was really, really strange. It always feels really weird like that. Don't know why, but it always does. The latest one was a 2018 Renault Megane Sport Tourer. That was, I think, called the Icon model in Germany when I was driving it. It's not called that in this country. That was also an automatic because I just found after that it's just better for me to not have to worry about changing gear when I'm trying to drive the Autobahn at 100 miles an hour. I drove that car on the Autobahn at over 100 miles an hour because I was on a de-restricted stretch and I had to make a plane to the airport, and I drove like a madman, and we did make it. The car was absolutely filthy by the time we got there, and it had no petrol left in it. So we got charged an absolute fortune. We made the plane, which is the most important thing. But we didn't have to pay for hotels and other stuff. So, yes, it is a bit weird getting your head around it, but, the first few minutes are always the worst. I don't know about driving left-hand drives in this country. Left-hand drive cars in this country I've not actually tried, but those are the ones I've driven once I'm on the continent. Next question is from Mr. Andy G. My question to you is, what's the longest non-stop drive you've ever done? That would be Durham to Leicester Forest East services. I have done longer drives in a day than that. I've driven from, where did we drive to? Yes, my sister's house, which is in the middle of Germany, all the way to, what's it called, that place in Belgium? Antwerp. Yeah, I've driven from near Kassel, which is in Germany, all the way to Antwerp in a day. That was a really long way. I don't even know how far that was, to be honest. I really don't know. But yeah, my bladder wouldn't last. Anything more than Durham to Leicester Forest East. What did I drive? I think it was the Seat Leon that I'm going to mention on the channel in a few days. That was probably in about 2007. I don't remember really. Yes, I think that's the longest one I've done without having to actually stop and empty my bladder. Next question from Colin Hicks, who's already had 3 of his cars on my channel. I do like, all the cars he's actually provided so far. Suzuki have just launched the Across and the Swace. Suzuki's Swace is one of the stupidest car names I think I've ever heard of, but I'm not a marketing executive. Suzuki is a brand that is usually aimed at the lower end of the market. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. The 2 cars are badge-engineered Toyotas. Yes, they are. And Suzuki used to produce an awful lot of badge-engineered cars back in the day. We had things like the Fiat Sedici, which was a Suzuki SX4, and then just a whole load of things in Japan. I think they had a was it a Suzuki Kara or something like that? I can never remember the name of a little Mazda with the gull-wing doors. That was also badged as Suzuki. Obviously, generations of the Geo Metro and Chevrolet Sprint and things like that. So, it's a fine tradition that Suzuki have, but it's come the other way this time. They're not the manufacturers who make a car for someone else. They're taking someone else's car. I was expecting them to be cheaper than the Toyota equivalent because I would expect the Suzuki version to depreciate more. Well, possibly, yes. The Swace is the same price as the equivalent Toyota spec for spec, so what's the point of buying the Suzuki? We can't check the Across because the equivalent RAV4 has not been announced. I think it comes down to things like, you see people selling the Citroen C1 and the Peugeot 108 and things like that. They're basically just a rebadged Toyota Aygo, and with the Toyota you get a 5-year warranty, which you don't get with the PSA group cars. But I think just Suzuki will be marketing that car differently, and possibly the discounts on that will be different. I don't really know what to say than that. I don't know whether it will depreciate faster or not. I don't know if they'll even sell that many of them. Generally, budget engineering means that the one that's the original car, in terms of, in this case, the Toyota Corolla estate, sells more than the one that's been rebadged. I don't, that's always the case, but often it is. Certainly under the Button Plan, which was the worst budget engineering example of anything I've ever seen. Was something in Australia from the mid 80s to the mid 90s. That was always the case. The one that had been badge engineered always sold worse than the original. Don't know about the Across, not really sure. Second question, I'm sure we can accommodate your needs, sir. You are a fan of some less popular brands. Well, yes, I drive a SsangYong. What more do I need to say? Do you worry about low residuals? Well, with the Toledo, I'm just talking about this with Simon from Langley Prestige, who, obviously we've had about 5 or 6 of his cars on the channel recently, so I'm sure you would have seen some of those. He's always sort of said, actually, that as long as you get the discounts on the new cars, and he's been in the motor industry a lot longer than I have, as long as you get the good discounts on the car, it doesn't matter so much really. And the SsangYong was less than a year old. It had done about, just work this out, over £5,000 of its depreciating on a £19,000 car already. The Seat was even worse. That was a £20,500 car that was 12,500 brand new. So, that's the first tip that you take, and it tends to slow down a bit. And I don't subscribe to the fad that you need to buy what cars are considered as prestige in order to, save yourself, money in depreciation, because those cars are really mainstream. Mercedes A-Class now outsells the Ford Focus and the Vauxhall Astra. They're not really premium cars. Everybody's got one, are they? And so, you pay more for maybe engineering could sometimes be better, but often the servicing's more expensive on these premium cars. And I don't know. I just prefer to pay less up front, really. MG3 is a cheap car. It's a very good car, actually. Ours was very good. We had it 3 years. Yes, I don't know. I just prefer to save the money up front and, not be too concerned about it when it's not worth that much of the end, because I haven't paid too much for it in the first place. So, Matt Walker, another long-standing channel viewer, has asked, do you think that the change to electric cars is possible due to the lack of infrastructure? And how will it affect the future of the classic car market, particularly cheaper modern classics? Well, actually, I went to a seminar about 2 years ago on the future of classic cars, and a lot of people are sort of saying that, we can just electrify a lot of them. Now, that's the case for things like, I don't know, E-types and other expensive ones, but in terms of the ones that are at the sort of lower end, it's really hard to say. So, if I go and buy myself, I don't know, a Rover Sterling or something, they're quite affordable modern classics at the moment. You might want to get one of those. Is that going to be something you want to electrify? Well, no, it's not worth electrifying that car, really. Petrol's still going to be available. They will still be selling, petrol cars for another 10 years. I know some brands will probably keep them on sale till right at the end. Other brands will try to get electrified as soon as possible, but yes, I think some people will not want to go electric. They'd much rather keep a classic car, or they would actually want to just wait till right at the end and pick up one of these that falls foul of new legislation. I don't know what will that will affect values really. It might have a positive or negative effect on them. equally, the infrastructure is only getting better. I know that people who have had electric cars for some time, and my friend Richard Jackson, who has the ZS EV, you would have seen on the channel for True Jacket reviews, and also on his 1 year ownership report. I know that they are noticing improvements in electric vehicle charging infrastructure, but not necessarily what entirely they would like. And the new plan that's been announced this week on how to, get us all to that place where new cars are only plug-in hybrid and electric after 2030, and hybrids but then being dropped in 2035. I think they're going to have to do quite a lot more work to get that into a place where it's suitable for a lot of people. But they were going to have to, if they want to, achieve their goals. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree or disagree with their goals and things like that. I'm just saying, that's what they are. But we'll talk more about that next week. So Alice from Safety First asks, would you review modified cars? I'd be interested to know whether you would or not, and why. I have already reviewed a number of modified cars. The Polo G40 that I reviewed was actually modified. That had an uprated manifold, I think, and a different exhaust. The Mini that I reviewed was incredibly modified. That was a Mayfair, but the bits of the interior have been changed, the exterior have been painted a different colour, different wheels are on a different steering wheel, engine modifications to it. I have reviewed modified cars already. I don't really want to review cars that are, too modified to the extent that you don't really even recognise what they look like and things. I'm not really into that, but modifications like on Mr. Coleman's Granada, from switching the Mark II TRX wheels to Mark III Scorpio wheels, are perfectly fine. They give a car a different look, and also sometimes they're easier to find tyres for. I don't object to that sort of thing at all. What I do object to is a car that's overly modified for really no reason, and has sort of, I don't know, lurid paintwork and very, very lowered suspension, which makes it impractical to drive. Mr. Richardson's Tomcat's been modified as well. I've driven that. That's got different suspension. I think it's got different exhaust on it as well. That probably for me is a little bit too firm in terms of the suspension, but I still managed to drive it. It's not the worst thing I've ever driven. So yes, it depends how far the modifications go, really. So Mr. David H, with the move to electric cars less than 10 years away, yes, we will be talking about that next week. Which three manufacturers do you think will not survive the transition? Number one is Lancia. I mean, Lancia is not sold in this country anymore, hasn't been for quite some time. They've only got one model on sale, and it's a mild hybrid version of what used to be called the Chrysler Upsilon over here. It's just basically a Fiat 500 platform with modifications. So because the Fiat 500's gone mild hybrid only, that powertrain is now in the Lancia Upsilon, is sold only in Italy, and I think that brand is just going to die. I don't think they're going to bother keeping it, but just won't bother. Another brand I think might get in trouble is Subaru. Subaru has started to dabble in the world of electrification for cars for our market. I don't know what they're planning globally, but their sales are so low that I don't think the importer's going to bother too much possibly with this country anymore. I think they're just going to stop importing those cars due to very low sales figures. Mitsubishi, we know, is going to go away by 2022 from importing cars in this country and continental Europe. So they were pioneers of electric cars, years ago, with the iMe, which was a pretty bad electric car, but they did have it, and they were the first people really after the tiny sales of the Vauxhall Ampera and the Chevrolet Volt to bring in a plug-in hybrid car. The Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid has been a tax avoidance special for years. But yes, I'd say those three, probably Lancia, Subaru, and Mitsubishi. Austin Allegro. Agatha, that's a really good channel, by the way, actually. Agatha's the name of the Allegro. I thoroughly recommend, if you're into the older BL cars and things like that, then please do have a look at that channel. The question would be, in a drag race for V5 documents, as in like sort of pink slip type things, who would win? Danger Mouse or Mr. Toad? It's got to be Danger Mouse. You've got to remember that Windmills was written in the Edwardian era, and the car that he would have at that time would not be very fast. Any sort of road cars would struggle to do about 50 most of the time. I think sort of 70, 80 were speeds that were only for racing cars, and I don't think there's any evidence that Mr. Toad in the Kenneth Grahame novel actually had a car that was a racing car. I think he had a normal one. So Danger Mouse, well, that's a much more sort of futuristic and sporty looking car. I definitely Danger Mouse would win, and he'd have Mr. Toad's car as well. What's your favourite wacky racer? It's got to be Dick Dastardly. I love Dick Dastardly. I don't know why. He's just my favourite. And of course he's got Muttley with him as well. It's just brilliant. Don't know what to say about that. And finally, of course, we come to what is often the highlight of the question and answer videos, Mr. Trab Ali, who has a secret mission for me. Every single time he's done one of these questions, it's always a secret mission. We started way back in the 60s and now we're in 1988. He says, the Germans are worried. In 1988, whilst taking a break in the Cornish Riviera, I imagine I'll be staying at the Glen Eagles Hotel, with the proprietor being Mr. Donald Sinclair, who was the inspiration of Basil Fawlty. Actually, no, it's Cornish Riviera, so I'd be somewhere else. That's in Devon. St Ives or something. You get a call on your mobile phone. They are indeed available. Vodafone was founded in 1985, so certainly. Work has already started on the ORR8 project, but everything has been stolen from a secret location in Canterbury. Diagrams, drawings, sketches, design coordinates, prototype models, die-cast models, clay models, everything. A whole year's work down the drain. Honda threatening to pull out of the project. Millions lost in time and money, unless everything is recovered. You've been assigned to this case, and the two dodgy Germans in the video are the culprits. Intelligence reports through your own sources are coming through. The two are heading towards Great Yarmouth to catch a boat to Bremen. Question: which rover vehicle of the time would you use to get to St Ives? Oh, I was right, it was St Ives. To Great Yarmouth. And what route? Well, it's going to have to be the brand new Rover 827 Vitesse. Fastback is driven by Tony Pond of that crazy Isle of Man TT video. Yeah, there's no question about it. It has to be that. That would fit all the bits and pieces in it as well. Gosh, St Ives to Great Yarmouth. It's a difficult question. The N25 is open, so I don't know. Probably just for normal way. Probably A30, M5, M4. M25, I think it's then something like the M11 and then the A11/14. Yeah. Which Honda vehicle of a time would you use to take plans back to Canterbury from Great Yarmouth? It's going to have to be a Prelude with four-wheel steering. They did have one at the time. It was the 2-litre, I think, 150 horsepower. And again, we'll go for that. Manual gearbox. I have driven a Prelude very, very, very short distance. I think it was a 2-litre manual of this era, and quite liked it. I'd hope that we get all the stuff in it. I mean, I hope so. We could always go for an Accord Aerodeck, if not. But the Accord Aerodeck at that time wasn't really any bigger than the Prelude. It just had a little bit more space because it's a hatchback. So I'll go for the Prelude. I think it has a rear wiper as well on a saloon body shape, so that's very good. So we've got to get from Great Yarmouth. Oh, that's a difficult one, actually, that. We're going to have to go A14, A11, M11, M25. hope that the Dartford crossing is available and it's not under massive time pressure, because yeah, I think the bridge didn't open until 1990, so yeah, it's going to be a bit tricky. We're going to have to just go at the right time of day. Canterbury, I think, is on the M2, so we go across the bridge, whatever A road that is. I'd never remember because it's not actually M25, that road. Through the tunnel, because the bridge isn't open yet, and we've got to go down the M2. I think that takes us to Canterbury. Yes, indeed. Mr. Richardson can't be tinkering with tigers. That's quite right. So there we are. There's some of your questions answered. Hopefully the light hasn't been too bad, and this is only about 3:30. But it's already fading here, which isn't great, but you know, that's the reality of autumn, isn't it? So thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. If you wish to submit a car for sensible second-hand reviews or no budget reviews, limit of course is £5,000 on sensible second-hand reviews and £1,000 on no budget reviews. Please send me an email, japl745@hotmail.com. I'm based in Hampshire, so please do bear that in mind. Yes, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. We will be doing another question and answer session next month. Facebook is facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting, and Instagram is instagram.com/Lloyd_Vehicle_Consulting. Thank you.